Story 1. When I was in college, I worked as a baker for a well-known regional bagel and sandwich chain. At some point, an assistant manager transferred to my store who was the stereotypical petty, power-tripping, ridiculous manager you find in this type of job. Her specialty was yelling at and berating employees in front of customers. I will never not believe that she enjoyed publicly humiliating people. It was tolerable until I agreed to cover a shift at the store she transferred from. Someone there asked me what I thought of her. I thought I was careful as I just commented that she had very high expectations which were hard for some people to meet. Understatement of the year. Well, this lovely person passed this back to her, which shot me to the top of her shit list. What followed was a series of write-ups for egregious violations like missing some seeds when mopping the floor or not emptying a garbage can that had a single paper towel in it. Lucky for me, I was one of the few people there certified to run the ovens. My opportunity for malicious compliance came one Saturday lunchtime when a charter bus pulled up. I'd seen this before and knew that a bus full of people buying sandwiches is equivalent to 2-3 people bringing bagels to work. Barely a blip compared to morning rush. I went to the counter to help and Miss Assistant Manager yells at me to get back into the kitchen and start baking more. I tried to tell her we were fine, but as soon as I opened my mouth, she yelled, "Shut your goddamn mouth, do what I told you, and don't stop baking until I say stop." Two important things to know is that first, when I took my certification test, they told me I passed it with the second fastest time on record for the local franchise. The second thing is that the ovens were adjustable. You could turn up the heat to speed up the cooking process. I went back to the baking area, cranked up the oven, and baked as fast as I possibly could. The ovens had 8 shelves, holding about 48 bagels each. Eventually, I had them all filled up, and was only gated by how fast they could cook, and I could send them up front. Miss Assistant Manager was down at the register this whole time and was not paying attention to stock levels in the bagel bins. I kept bringing out shelf after shelf. At one point, the bins were overflowing, so I had to start putting them in extra bins we kept in the back. Once those were full, I started putting them in on metal trays. The crowd finally died down and Miss Assistant Manager finally looks at the bagel bins and realizes she never told me to stop. She asked me if there was anything still baking, and I informed her that every shelf was full. She lost it and started yelling that I was getting fired until multiple people pointed out that I just did exactly what she asked. The store manager ended up coming in and pretty much everyone told them the exact same story. Miss Assistant Manager had to bag up the mountains of excess bagels and drive them to all the other stores in the area so that they wouldn't go to waste. Even after that, we still exceeded the allowed wastage for the day, and she was reprimanded. She still yelled at everyone after that, but she was at least more careful in her wording. Story 2. Short backstory: I'm suffering from social anxiety, and the key element to this story is, I hate when strangers touch me. I get really uncomfortable and freaked out by it. That and the fact that I did take a couple self-defense classes a couple years ago. Not too much, but enough to know how to strike a punch. So this story happens in the local go-to-discount store. The dress code is a blue polo with the store's logo in a big yellow font on the back, and a small logo on the front. It really should not be hard to spot when someone is an employee. I was wearing a classic white shirt at the time, not remotely any hue of blue, and no bright yellow name tag on. Anyway, I was casually browsing the store, putting stuff in a cart I was carrying with me. At some point, I decide that I don't really want this random item, so naturally, I go to put it back, because I'm a decent human being that doesn't leave stuff lying around randomly. In comes the angry witch. She proceeds to first snap her fingers and say something along the lines of, "Hey, you, come over here." Like so many others on this post, I ignore her, thinking she isn't talking to me, because why would she? I'm obviously not an employee. Turns out she didn't like this. At one point, I walked away from her, toward the registers to pay for my goods. As I'm walking away, she proceeds to walk up behind me, grab me by the shoulder, yell something to the like of, "How dare you blah blah blah, I am a self-entitled witch, yada yada yada, you should not ignore me," and spin me around. As I mentioned, I'm a no touchy-touchy guy, and I'm not saying what I did is necessarily okay, but I acted on pure instinct from what I learned in self-defense. Mid-spin around I yell, "Back off!" as loud as I can, a good tactic to use if you're being assaulted or harassed, as it works as a deterrent factor for the assailant, because you're not an easy target, and it also draws people's attention, thus giving you witnesses, and proceeded to give a mixture of a shove and a punch. The result of the punch was Karen falling flat on her butt and proceeded to yell even more obscure things. Me, "What are you doing, lady?" Karen, "What the duck? Did you just punch a paying customer? I demand to talk to your manager right now." What? I don't work here? You filthy liar, you just assaulted me. I'll have you fired and arrested. Luckily, a manager was actually in the same aisle as we were in. Why she didn't ask him is beyond me. He's wearing the name tag. And I guess he heard the shouting cause he came rushing over. Manager, what's going on here? Karen, your employee just ignored me, and then proceeded to assault me completely unprovoked. I demand that you fire him and call the police. Me, lady, I told you I don't work here. You assaulted me, of course, I'm gonna defend myself. Manager, this man doesn't work here. Of course he is. He was putting things back on the shelves. Manager, he still doesn't work here. Never has either as far as I know. I still demand that you call the police. The manager gave me a knowing look and a smile. Turns out the store has CCTV cameras pointing just down this aisle. Manager, I'd be happy to call the police for you. I'm sure they'll be here soon. Me, look, man, I really just want to buy my stuff and go home. You're not going anywhere. You assaulted me. You're lucky I'm going to the police instead of beating you. Mature, wow. Who would have imagined? Long story short, the manager called the police, and two nice gentlemen in uniforms were with us within 10 minutes, asking what happened. Karen proceeds to give the story about how I completely ignored her because she had a question, and that I then proceeded to hit her and kick her. What? I shoved her out of the way. And I tell my story, where she keeps screaming about how I'm a filthy liar, and she's a poor victim, because she's a woman, and all other sorts of nonsense. The manager tells us he can quickly pull up the footage from the CCTV, and the police were more than eager to see it. About 5 minutes later, we're all standing in the back looking at the footage. Officer, well, lady, it does look like you assaulted him, and he simply defended himself. I don't spot him either punching or kicking you. This results in arguing that would most likely be flagged for excessive foul language, and is just one giant mess of a discussion between her and the officers. I guess it can be summarized that she had a moment, and it ends with her lunging at one of the officers. Looks like she was going to slap him or something, and she was taken back to the station with them. Apparently attempting to assault an officer isn't very popular with said officer. I have no clue what happened to her, but I was free to go, and got a free coupon for approx $35 for the store, which was more than the total I was buying for, so I was quite happy with that. I saw the manager a couple times in the store afterward. Apparently, the crazy woman has been banned from the store, but he hasn't heard anything new either. It was all one big crazy show of what is going on. Story 3. Here we go again. Hey everyone, this is another story about my own entitled mother. What does she want this time? A key? No. Information about my personal life? Nope. This time she wants me to get rid of my cat, seriously. So some things have changed. Mainly all my sisters see why I don't want my mom involved in my personal life. After I told them about the key story, they all took my side. Anyways, let's get into today's tale. So this happened about 2 days ago. I had been home for about a week now and got my cat. She's a sweetheart, a little shy, but she's an absolute cuddle bug. Cat tax paid at the end of this story. I spent all my free time snuggling with her or petting her for the past week. Fast forward to Sunday, it's my day off from work, and I just want to relax. My sister was going to bring my nieces over so we could make cookies and brownies together. So around 1 p.m., I start getting everything out to be ready when they get here. I was a little worried about the cat around them since she was still getting used to the new place, but she was settling in great. So I have all the baking supplies out, so I'm on the couch, petting my cat and waiting for them to show up. About 5 minutes later, there's a knock on my door. My cat runs and hides in the bedroom, and I go answer the door. I invited my sister and my nieces in. My sister starts apologizing to me. I ask her for what, and she says she brought Mom, who was down in her car. I know you don't want her here, but I have to go to work soon and no one else could take them. Now I'm a little pissed off because I don't want to deal with my egg donor and my sister could have asked me to watch them. I told her as much and she says, I know I should have asked, but I didn't know how nieces would react to the cat. I sighed deeply. Okay, I'll deal with it this one time for the girls, but next time tell me please. I take my nieces over to the kitchen to get started and my sister puts their bags on the couch. Then there's a knock. I ask my sister to get it, and in comes the entitled mother. I try my best to ignore her and just focus on my nieces. We're having fun and are about to put the cookies in the oven. As I put the last dough ball on the tray, my sister gets up to leave for work. The girls run over to give her a hug. I say goodbye and turn to put the cookies in the oven while they're distracted. They're still young, about 5 and 3. I'm really cautious about them and the oven when my entitled mother loses her mind. She starts screaming about how the girls are going to get burned. Now normally when the girls are around I try to hold my temper, but I was already in bad mood and not really in the mood to deal with stupid BS. So I snapped back, how? They're on the other side of the room. Are you really that daft? She shuts up and slumps on the couch. My sister pulls me aside and asks if I'll be okay. I tell her I'm sorry for snapping, so I'll be fine. It'll only be another 30 minutes or so. She leaves and I go back to fun uncle mode. I decided to introduce my nieces to the cat. So we go to my room where she's laying down on the bed. I sit down and she crawls on my lap. The girls start petting her. She's purring. Everyone's happy. The younger one is a little shy, but she's okay. The timer goes off. I bring the girls to the living room and take the cookies out. I put the trays down, and when I turn around, the girls aren't on the couch anymore. All of a sudden, I hear the youngest crying. I go into full Uncle Bear mode and rush into the bedroom. I see my niece crying. When I ask what happened, my mom says the cat scratched her. I check her arm, there's no mark and Lilith doesn't scratch people. So I took my oldest niece to a different room and asked her what happened. She told me that my entitled mother brought them into the room, and niece too was scared. That's all. Now I'm furious. I storm back into the room and my mom says, "You should get rid of that demon. She is so mean. I've had enough. Get out of my apartment, you delusional witch." She was shocked. I had never yelled or sworn in front of the girls. Lilith might be named after a demon, but she's an angel. You need to leave now. My nieces start crying, and I feel awful, so I give them both a cookie for the road. I call my sister and tell her what happened, and she comes by after work. I give her a bag of cookies for the girls. She tells me my mother called her and told her a completely different version of what happened, that my cat attacked the girls and blah blah blah. Luckily my sister believed me, because she's not a complete idiot. Story 4. This story takes place about 2 or 3 years ago on a cold November night. I had been invited to a girls' night with a couple of girlfriends. About a year before this all took place, I had met a now very good friend of mine, Annie, a bright-eyed, brilliantly smart young girl who had recently moved across the globe from China. We met in college and instantly hit things off. Shortly after we met, Annie also met Karen. I was told that they met while shopping at the same store, but I honestly think that they met because Karen wanted them to meet. She probably saw us hanging out here and there and just had to be a part of it. Now, Annie is a very bright and optimistic person and sees the good in everyone, so trying to warn her about Karen proved to be futile. On a good note, she didn't believe anything Karen said about me either. I introduced her to a few of my other girlfriends and they welcomed her with open arms. So, to the night of the story. I had received a text from Katie asking if I wanted to join her, Annie, Karen, and another friend of ours, Maria, for some dinner and shopping. I was at first reluctant to say yes because Karen, granted at this point she hadn't really been bothering me, but we still very much didn't get along, but decided against it because I really needed a night to just have fun. I quickly got ready and met up at our chosen spot, which was maybe 10-15 minutes from my apartment. I instantly knew I made the wrong decision when I walked up, and the first thing out of this witch's mouth was, "Wow, that dress seriously makes you look fat. Also, you are way too overdressed." I was not. I had on a simple red bodycon dress, my favorite style, and some matching 3-inch heels. My makeup wasn't too flashy and my hair was done up in a curly ponytail. We all were pretty well dressed, not to mention that the restaurant we were eating at was noted to be formal. I am also not fat, not trying to body shame anyone. I'm 5'9" and weigh 54 kilograms. This woman and I were very similar in weight. I gave her a cold, "Don't screw with me" glare and complimented everyone on their wonderful choice of attire, but her, just for a bit of petty revenge. It was a Friday night, so the restaurant was pretty packed, and we had to wait about 20 minutes before being seated. Dinner actually went very well, to my surprise, besides the occasional "attention to me" outburst from Karen during conversations. We didn't stay long after we were done because we were all excited to go shopping and buy ourselves some new outfits, accessories, and some very much needed household items. My toilet paper was running low. It was fairly early in the night, about 6:30 by the time we left the restaurant and decided to stop by a few stores. We eventually came up at this cute little chic-style clothing store. I had maybe been in the store once or twice prior, and remembered that they had a great selection of styles. Maria and I headed to the back because she and I shared a similar fashion sense, while Annie, Karen, and Katie stayed up at the front and looked at some jewelry. I was honestly enjoying myself, and was beginning to think that maybe it was a good idea I decided to come out. Plus, I hadn't seen Maria in a little while, and it was great to catch up with her. She and her now husband were actually engaged, and she was telling me all about how her wedding planning was going. In a previous conversation we had a few months before, I had to tell her I couldn't make it to the wedding because I would be flying out of town during that month to stay with some family and attend a funeral. Our conversation was going great when I all of a sudden heard a loud, "Oh my God, look how cute and small he is," followed by a nervous sounding, "Ma'am, please step away from my baby." Maria was no stranger to the likes of Karen, so she and I both headed to the front of the store to see what was going on, and maybe put a stop to it before things got out of hand. Near the jewelry racks stood a young mother, late 20s, early 30s, and what looked to be her sleeping newborn son in a car seat stroller, and a very flamboyant Karen who couldn't read the social cues to back up. She proceeded to get closer to the infant and gushed out loudly, "He's seriously the cutest thing I've ever seen." Then turned to us, "Guys, look at this little stinker. I'm actually surprised you turned back to the mother. Have him out this late. He should be at home." The woman looked from Karen to us, almost as if asking for some backup. Annie then stepped forward and gently grabbed Karen's arm, trying to pull her backwards. "Karen, I think you should leave them alone. You're kind of too close." "Oh, get lost. I'm not hurting anyone." This is the part where I wish I would have left. By this point, the baby had awoken from the loud voices and looked on the verge of tears. The witch turned back to the mother and said, "I'm going to hold him for a bit, okay?" The woman vehemently pulled the stroller back and said, "No, you need to leave me alone." The other girls and I pleaded with Karen to just leave the poor woman and her baby alone, but she refused. "No, I'm going to hold him. You can do your shopping if you want, and then come back to get him when you're done." I think the woman went into shock from the audacity Karen had because she stood frozen. We all did, our bad, when Karen reached forward and began to unbuckle the baby from the car seat. I would like to note that this baby was tiny and couldn't have been more than a week old. As Karen proceeded to remove the buckles from the child, the woman's hand zipped down faster and smacked her so hard across the face that she nearly fell into the jewelry stands. Cue the chaos. "Oh, what was that for? Who do you think you are?" Baby starts screaming. The four of us try to hold Karen back as she proceeds to charge at the woman. The store employee comes asking what's the matter and quickly proceeds to call police upon seeing a screaming child, upset mother, and psychopathic Karen trying to claw her face off. "You're a witch. Stay away from my baby," she yells at the mother. Karen, calm down. "Screw you." Baby screams louder and store employees attempt to defuse the situation by standing between mother and the five of us. That the psycho eventually calms down and the cops show up to take everybody's statements. No shocker, Karen was in the wrong and is almost whisked away into a cop car, but the woman decides not to press charges, simply asking to just leave because she's tired and needs to calm down her little one who is still fussing. I also doubt that anything would have happened to Karen because her parents would have gotten her out with no marks. In the end, I definitely regretted going out. The only things that kind of made it worth it were that I got to see some of my other good friends. I bought a few cute outfits, and I had a great dinner. I never did get the toilet paper I needed though. Edit. For confusion on the funeral. I've had a few comments and PMs with people wondering how you can schedule a funeral months in advance. A family friend of our grandfather died, and a lot of her family and friends couldn't make certain dates, so she and the rest of her family preserved the body until an agreed-upon date. That date happened to be 4 days before Maria's big day, and when she invited me to the wedding, it was about 2.5 months before the funeral was scheduled, so I had to tell her that I couldn't make it. Story 5. I was reminded about this a few minutes ago when I had to stop to let a pack of bicycle riders slowly cross when I had the right-of-way. We have all been there. So years ago, I regularly took part in a bike ride across Iowa. This is called Ragbri, and it takes place every year in Iowa in the last week of July. Rundown of Ragbri. Ragbri is a rolling party of sunburn, alcohol, and pork chops. It's a ton of fun, and everyone for the most part is kind, and you don't have to worry about anything but where you left your bike after you went to the beer garden. I was part of a team. Teams rode together or separated to raise money for one thing or another. Our team stood out because we wore very outlandish things such as feathers. I rode a recumbent trike with 2 wheels up front and 1 in the back. I love my bike. I have spent thousands of dollars on upgrades and parts, completely going for as much carbon fiber as I could. Well, as I made my way into a small Iowa town, I could feel my gears not acting as they should, so I made note to stop at the local bike shop instead of the multiple bike companies that ride Ragbri and set up tents, because I like to support local businesses. When I found the shop, it was closed. Who on earth would close their bike shop knowing Ragbri is coming through? So off to the tents, and I get the suspected part to replace. I get the part, engrave my name into it, and bolt it on. I mark all my parts on Ragbri as though rare part thieves are a thing, and my bike uses expensive parts. When I was a rookie at Ragbri, I was told to do this. So my team meets up and off to begging, drinking, and overall have fun, as is the thing. To give you a picture of Ragbri, imagine thousands of sweaty spandex-covered bikers clicking their bike shoes, metal pedal clips, all over town like drunken tap dancers. In hindsight, not so pretty, but oh my god, is it fun. Well, when you get to towns, you tend to just leave your bike unattended and not worry about it because thousands of bikes are everywhere, and who would steal a bike on Ragbri? Anyway, going out, having fun, and finding a place to sleep is the routine. When I got up the next morning, my bike was upside down and looked an absolute mess. Someone hadn't stolen my bike, no, but picked it clean of parts, including the carbon wheels. I was beyond mad and called 911. Not probably the right number to call, but sue me. An officer comes and tells me that I'm probably the 100th person to call this morning. He takes my report and doesn't give me hope as he leaves. I obsess on finding my parts and make my way to the tents, campground, and everywhere I can think to look. Eventually, I resigned to quitting Ragbri and having to order the parts. As I'm loading my bike onto the sagging wagon, I figure I may stop by the local bike store. I do, and it's open. I walk in, and the owner greets me and asks how he can help. My auto response is, just looking. Look I did, and look I saw. In the back room on his desk is my wheel and gearbox, as well as my bike's manufacturer webpage. I lose it and tell him to give me my wheel. He balks and orders me out of the store, or he will call the police. I tell him to call them. He stutters and tells me to get out, or he will force me out. Now I'm a big man that spent 7 years fighting overseas, and at this point I'm eager to go hands-on, so I smile and invite him from behind the counter. He refuses, and I call 911 again. The police show up, and he tries to say I was robbing him. I explained I saw my bike parts on his desk, and he was the one stealing parts off bikes all night. The cop knows the guy by name and asks to look in the back. The guy refuses. I know without probable cause this will go nowhere, and the back door is now closed. Screw this, I say, and push my way into the back room and grab my wheel with my name on the hub clear as day. I bring it out to the officer and show him. The owner starts yelling about illegal searches. I yell back I'm not a cop, and I don't care if I get a charge, but I've just brought him what he needs to search. Other officers arrive, and the place is searched top to bottom. The owner is arrested and taken away. Ragbri is over for me, so I will stay. I called the Ragbri officials and explained what happened. They spread the word. Like a pack of hung-over spandex-covered zombies, people start to stumble over to see what's up and reclaim parts. The officers don't let anyone take their parts, but let them identify them. Every part of my bike was recovered and held for evidence for roughly $3,000. Tons of other people claim their parts. The officers tag everything, take our information, and give us a case number. A few weeks later, it's a micro Ragbri as doctors, attorneys, teachers, and all walks of life meet up and return to the small town for retribution. The guy refused offers and took it all the way to jury trial. I get the stand and explain that yes, I did assault the owner when pushing past to open the back door. Yes, I did trespass on and on. I still accomplished my goal of getting the evidence the officer needed. I was never charged and I had no repercussions. The defense tried to get the evidence and search tossed, but it wasn't. He was found guilty of a ton of theft and other things unrelated. He even had the lower to an R-15 in his shop and was already a felon, thus it counted as a firearms charge. In the end, he went away and his reputation was ruined. I've never been back to that town and also never rode Ragbri again. Story 6. I volunteer for a small-town Australian fire brigade which often does burn-offs of public land and private land if you ask us nicely. I would love to be a full-time firefighter and am planning on becoming one soon. Most of the non-firefighting work I do is in my own small town, and I know most of the people around me. One day, I volunteered for a large-scale burn-off, which is being coordinated by the local council and forest management, which is being conducted in a town which has its own paid firefighters. This absolute degenerate of a human being drags her child over to talk to me, which is odd for a number of reasons. 1. I am currently in full gear and am talking to my captain about how best to begin burning off the bushes. 2. The area was closed off to the public. How did this Darrow get in? And 3. There is a fire 20 meters from us. Either way, this reprobate keeps telling her child to ask me something. This kid is visibly terrified, and rightly so, because we are next to a fire. The kid begins asking me and my captain about the country fire authority, and my captain tells me I have to get her out of here. Kid, mumbling, "Why are you starting a fire?" I start trying to tell the kid about how burning off overgrown bush and scrub can aid in preventing bushfires. But remember that we are right next to a fire. Me. I'm sorry guys, I would love to chat, but we need you guys to get back to safety. Crazy lady, this is a burn off. It's safe. No, it's not safe. There is a fire, and it's not safe to have you or your kid hanging around the fire or our appliances. No, it's meant to be safe, and if it's not safe, then I'm going to complain to the council that you were conducting an unsafe burn-off near my house. It wasn't near any houses, but it was close to a footy oval and footy was cancelled for it. I try my best to tell her that the fire is under control, but it's not safe to have her and her child next to an ongoing fire. Still refusing to back away, she says, "Why are you being so rude? My son just wanted to talk to a fireman." Me, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it's not safe for your kid to be here. Try and come by any station or call a member or something, and I'm sure we can get someone to talk to your kid, but not now." "Screw you. My kid loves fires and you're being a total jerk." I for sure was as nice as possible. "I'm going to talk to your manager." She really said manager? "And you'll be fired." "I'm a volunteer." I calm down. "Miss, you need to leave." This delusional woman pushes past me and marches up, kid still in hand, to my captain, who isn't even in charge of the operation, and tells him that I'm being rude and trying to get her to leave her neighborhood. I didn't tell her that, and the captain is the one who told me to do this. "Captain, ma'am, you need to leave now or else we will have to call the police as you are interfering in CFA business." The crazy lady storms off and screams at me on the way by. The whole time her kid was terrified and trying to get away, but this mental case had his hand held so tight it was about to pop off. I can't believe how crazy this chick is, dragging her kid around an active fireground and bothering firemen while they are working. I can't be fired. I can't even be thrown off the brigade by my captain. It's weird, but basically if they want to fire me, the best that they can do is have my qualifications taken away. But this doesn't matter. This crazy woman tried her best to have me fired for trying to keep her and her kids safe from a fire. Sorry, it's not really a "I don't work here" lady story in the conventional sense, but it's not really my job.